Ja, wir fangen heute mit.
Yeah, we're going to start with David Golumbia today. David Golumbia is maybe the person who knows most about cyber-libertarianism. This book of his was published in November 2024, Cyber-Libertarianism, the Right-Wing Politics of Digital Technology. Only a few days after Trump, with the help of Elon Musk, had won the US elections. And what's tragic about that is, first off, David Golumbia never actually held this book in his hands. David Golumbia has approximately the second he finished his manuscript in summer of 2023, when he received the diagnosis of very aggressive cancer and succumbed to it only a few weeks later and never actually saw his book published. So I would like to take a minute to remember David Golumbia together. This book has been almost completely ignored. He's been researching his ideology for 17 years, and I want to show you a few things from that ideology and what marks it. And we can say David Golumbia has predicted all of this much, much better than all of us, because his first book about this topic was released in 2009. And now if we look at this coalition of the Trump government, the tech platforms, the European right-wing populists, in this country the AfD predominance, supported by Vladimir Putin, then we can only say, well, we should have listened to what David Golumbia has been trying to tell us much sooner. So of course I could spend many hours with you just presenting that content to you, but I'm going to summarize it in 2 chapters. I'm going to show you the thought leaders of this misanthropic ideology, and then in the second chapter the narratives they have spread to claim this power. So when we look at the thought leaders, first and foremost, the most shocking finding is that this book is one of the favorite books of Peter Thiel, The Sovereign Individual. It was released in 1997. And I'm going to repeat the story that is told in there, no matter how disgusting. The story goes like this. Sovereign individuals are under threat from a tyrannical democratic state. These sovereign individuals are typically male, white, elites, and economically successful. And the state is always in their way, for example, by demanding taxes from them. And now we have the digital revolution, and that's a great thing, because these individuals can finally become sovereign through a model that they call exit. They recommended even back then that these great business people should try and remove themselves from the self-destructive democratic state, ideally in organizations that don't need to pay taxes because they become extraterritorial in the digital sphere. And they also say, in principle, just let this whole democratic state fall into chaotic disrepair and anarchy. We don't need these people that are worth less than you. We don't need to take care of them as we did in the past. So already there's the misanthropic narrative here, and that's exactly what the tech companies have done. They created extraterritorial organizations. They don't care about society they're active in. They try to avoid taxes as aggressively as they can, and this is the script for that. You probably know this guy here as well. You can see from the other photo he's styling himself a bit as a bit of a Sith Lord here. he said democracy and freedom are incompatible. Already in the early aughts, he proposed that we should just dismantle the entire US administration. All the bureaucrats should all be retired and instead establish a sort of CEO king that should reign the US. And maybe that reminds you of what's happening right now with Trump and Musk in the US. A different shade we can find here in Nick Land's book, The Dark Enlightenment, his main work. And you can see from the title, it's dark, it's somber. We destroy the old order and establish a new one. Enlightenment and democracy are over. We're taking over, and Nick Land phrases it in some sort of pseudo-cool postmodern sound and with quite disgusting eugenic thoughts. For example, it's cool to break the taboo of saying Heil Hitler, as we've seen just last week with Kanye West. All of that is in here. It's cool to be racist again. And the final one that I want to show you is Balaji Srinivasan. The interesting thing is he's from this investment network of Andreessen Horowitz, who financed many of these tech companies. And you can imagine this is a sort of evolution of the sovereign individual, the first book. Network states are states that are outside of democratic states, that don't pay any taxes. And now if you think, okay, that's just some crazy ideas, maybe go to praxisnation.com. There you can see how far they've progressed already. This is what they're currently doing. And of course, all of it supported with cryptocurrency, because then I can also bypass the democratic national states economically. And I don't know how you feel about that. Probably great. The digital liberation movement, now we're finally being liberated. I don't think how you imagined your liberators, but I definitely thought they were different than what you see on this photo.
It's getting especially interesting. David Golumbia went into the depth and asked what kind of story are they telling us. It's fascinating that especially people like Trump and Elon Musk are telling us that that they're liberating us. It's quite obvious that who gets crushed under this, 95% of the population, they're only doing this for get more money. So and pump that into their oligarchy and leave everything in chaos behind. But the smart thing they did is they told quite intelligent stories about that. So one story is that the digital revolution is decentralizing and democratizing. Well, let's remember, sovereign individual. It's a liberation movement through digital revolution. So now, Golumbia also already said and asked, is that actually true? Let's look at the accumulation of power in the digital world, the largest ever. Can anybody say what is then decentralized about this? And at this point, I can make a little cutout from my own research. We did this empirical measurement of monopolies, and where you see the entire traffic in the world, you have the monopolies on the left, and then there's this whole graveyard on the right. David Golumbia would have loved our research. The second narrative is that the tech libertarians have the platforms liberate the humans by offering them an open forum. And Golumbia described this in a metaphorical way. Assume this is a forum let's take the first democratic forum in the history of the world, the marketplace in the middle of Athens, and Greek agora, and they discussed about things and debated things. So David Golumbia asked these questions. If under monopolistic conditions this forum doesn't belong to the public or the commons, assume that Mega Elon from the Greek populace buys this forum and says, I will liberate you from this democracy, but you can say everything, but I own this forum. And you can then easily say, well, careful, this is, this is a deceit, this is deceitful. So, and as a media scientist, I can find this anywhere. It's quite fascinating to me. The digital revolution is a similar liberation as the printing press. And if you look at these presses, texts, you find different two examples. First of all, the first example is that the printing press liberates us from what? From the papism and from the Catholic Church, and it liberated us from absolutism and monarchy. And you see the Bastille and Louis XIV. And at the point of the French Revolution, 40% of these people who were in this terrible prison, 40% were in the prison because they had acted against the censorship laws. But the question is, what kind of tyranny are we living? Are we liberated from? I wasn't in a tyranny 20 years ago. Were you in a tyranny where you weren't allowed to say anything 20 years ago? It's interesting that all the democratic indices for the democracy that place the highest level of democracy worldwide in the 2000s. Well, what have we been liberated from? Why is it a liberation in the same light as a printing press from the papism or monarchy? And I will get to my conclusions. We will go a little past Golumbia in this. The first question we have to ask ourselves is if we see the entire history of this. The first starting point is when Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web, everything was cool, right? And then we see something went wrong at some point. And at some point, if you want to put things on a timeline, the first point in time is when Google started the systematic data surveillance of the user community, and this is the point where it went bad, and the second point where it went really bad, and when every idiot should have understood, was 2013. 12 years ago was when PRISM was uncovered by Edward Snowden, where the tech companies were together with went together with the intelligence services, and we only have started having a debate when Musk bought Twitter in 2023. So that's where the first time when people said, "Oh, I don't like this anymore." So that's when we have a look at these texts. It wasn't the start, and then things went worse. The problem always had been there. These anti-human, anti-democratic ideology had been there in the beginnings of the tech world, and we hadn't understood it for a long time. And I would say, well, David Golumbia, thank you. He wrote 2009, The Cultural Logic of Computation, Against the Stream, then 2016, Politics of Bitcoin, and was ignored, tragically, until the end of his life. The second point is I cut things together. So August 2000, last year, there's unrest in Great Britain. Elon Musk posted, "Civil war is inevitable." Do you see the storming of the Capitol? You have in January 2020. You have everywhere. You have the advancing right-wing populists on every platform. We have a worldwide movement on the basis on the Western world, on the basis of a larger narrative, and that comes out of the ideology of the tech-libertarianism. Damn it! At the end, have we been flashed like in Men in Black? We should have seen this. They didn't even do it in secret. They did it in the open, but they gave us a pink fluffy bunny. We will give you access for free, interaction, be part of interaction of wonderful communities. It's all about creativity. Come in with your friends and family. And we looked all at this fluffy bunny. And why did they dangle this fluffy bunny in front of us? Because they wanted to create a lock-in. Because if you go into those platforms, and this leads to a capture, a hostage taken. This is very unironically described as lock-in. From the world of the tech-libertarians, they say, well, we come in, but we rule. You're forever powerless. I have a question to the audience. So we have 2 points where we can start. So at the first point, we have freedom, participation, interaction, and so on and so on. We can fight against that, or we can fight against the monsters of monopoly. So where do you want to fight against? And freedom or interaction, or against the monopoly monsters? Who fingers up, who wants to fight against freedom of speech? Who of you wants to fight against the monopoly monster? I see a strong majority who would want to fight against the monopolies. What do? We fight against the wonderful freedoms that they give us. We followed this narrative completely, and they give us the fluffy bunnies, and we have these people. People who say we should regulate this, we should cut our freedoms, we should regulate this, we control this, and we should censor this. And you don't have to wonder, and then you shouldn't wonder when people say, "Well, do you want to censor the net?" The easier part would be to fight against the monopolies. Everybody would understand within 20 minutes that monopolies in the media world are completely unacceptable. Why do you Why don't you empower the communities? Why shouldn't they decide about the algorithms? Why shouldn't they decide about terms and conditions? Why don't we open these platforms? Why don't we create open standards? Why don't we break down these privileges of the monopoly, monsters of monopoly? Why do we accept these the internet belongs to these oligopolies? And at this point, I would put in my own ideas. Golumbia is about the ideology, and he doesn't have the. It never had the solutions. Freedom for the outlinks, often open standards for platforms. Why should social networks monopolize these media Apart from the book I wrote, we also have the Safe Social initiative. We already have more than 260,000 signatures, so that join us so that we can finish this, stop this. So now remember
what we used to call maybe liberty of like Internet Liberty 1.0. There was this great book, What Would Google Do, by Jeff Jarvis. That used to be cool back then, in 2009. The same year that Golumbia published The Culture of Computation. Nobody cared for Golumbia. Who of you wants to do what Google does? Hands up. Nobody. All of that stuff that you can only read with nausea. Let's put that aside and create liberty of the net 2.0. We shouldn't ask ourselves what could Google do, but what would Golumbia do? And I just created a subtitle for him. I called it Dismantling Anti-Democratic Tech Monopolies. Because I think that's what Golumbia would suggest. He would storm the Bastille. And biographically, for me, it's a great coincidence, if you think about it. Big Tech Must Go. It was published in August 2023. I think he would have been very interested in that. Unfortunately, he died in September 2023, and he would have had to wait a year for the English translation. But one thing is clear, I think we should think about how can we continue in the spirit of Golumbia and see that this goddamn Bastille is falling and how we send these monopoly monsters back to where they belong. Thank you for your attention. And if you have questions, we still have a few minutes left.